Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Friday edition of Prime News on My Media Prime Live from Douala. My name is Genda Belgian Blanche King. To begin the news today, the results of the General Certificate of Examination (JCE) have been released. The announcement was made earlier today, October 2nd, 2020, by the GC Board Chair. Ordinary level results have witnessed an improvement from 62.15% in 2019 to 64.04% this year. Advanced level results, on the contrary, have dropped from 74.24% in 2019 to 64.4% in 2020. Congratulations to all the successful candidates. Away from that, another episode has emerged in the ongoing FPF LFC saga, with Abdul Rahman Amadou Baba nominated as president of an ad hoc committee put in place to organize the 2020-2021 Elite 1 and 2 football championships. The president of Atoua Filan Football Club of Garua was chosen during an emergency meeting with the Administrative Council of Cameroun Professional Football League, which took place this Friday. Abdul Rahman Baba became prominent when he dragged the Cameroon football to the Court of Arbitration for Sports, which later suspended FPF and ousted then President Tombe Aroko Sidiki. FPF boss Seydou Mbombo Njoya, though a member of the Administrative Council of LFC, did not show up. Away from that, some 50 vulnerable and internally displaced children living in Limbe have received back-to-school materials to support them go back to school come October 5, 2020. The handing over exercise took place recently at the Divisional Delegation of Social Affairs for FACO in Limbe. Details with Kmer Onorimbom in the following report.
Many children in different parts of the world, and Cameroon in particular, live in extreme poverty and places where getting education is difficult, especially those children living amidst conflict areas or facing internal displacement. This situation has been made worse by the COVID-19 pandemic, making it difficult for families to send their children to schools as schools are starting to reopen. Many families continue to face the challenges of hunger, loss of household income, as they are in great need of financial and social support to make schools resumption effective. It is against this setback that the Henrietta Concho Foundation, in partnership with the Divisional Delegation of Social Affairs for FACO, is reaching out to some 50 vulnerable and internally displaced children living in Limbe with didactic materials to support them go back to school come the 2020-2021 academic year. Addressing parents, guardians, and beneficiaries, the program coordinator, Mr. Tala Elvis, said education is one of the greatest instruments used in fighting poverty. He called on the children to value education as a top priority in their lives despite the several distractions.
We are just extending a hand of support to these children as a way of us, trying to alleviate poverty and also trying to make sure we contribute to end suffering in our nation and in the world as a whole.
The back-to-school items comprises of school bags, notebooks, pens, pencils, rulers, crayons, sharpeners, just to mention but these few.
I'm very happy for the Takunju Foundation, for the school units that they provided for me, and for reducing the cost of my going back to school this academic year.
On her part, the Divisional Delegate for Social Affairs for FACO thanked the Henrietta Concho Foundation for identifying the needs of these vulnerable children and called on other organizations to emulate the example of the donor to reach out to more vulnerable and internally displaced children in our communities.
In our office, we have a list of more than 500 children who are displaced and who are within FACO division. And we think that we have not exhausted the list because we must have many more children out there.
The No Child Should Be Left Out campaign also seeks to build leadership skills in children such as honesty, self-confidence, being a good listener, helping the children to check positive as well as negative aspects of their behaviors, identify areas where they lack confidence to improve upon, and set goals to do their best in everything.
Let's revisit October 1, 2020. My major prime team was on the ground yesterday to give us or present the atmosphere in some parts of the restive region. Our reporters told us yesterday that activities were grounded in Kumba, Mamu, Boya and some parts of Limbe. Let's now visit Bamenda in the following report to see how the city was yesterday, October 1, 2020. This is Bamenda, chief town of the Northwest region. Yesterday, October 1, 2020, was a dead day in most, if not all, parts of the city. The markets remained closed and economic activities grounded. Inhabitants stayed indoors, responding to ghost town calls imposed by separatists who have fallen back on history, commemorating the independence of British Southern Cameroon. On October 1, 1961, West Cameroon or British Southern Cameroon gained independence by joining their brothers of La République du Cameroun, who had earlier gained their independence on January 1, 1960. Since the escalation of the Anglophone crisis late 2016, October 1 has never been normal. Every October 1 in the two English-speaking regions has been tensed and characterized by gun battles, as some individuals are bent on establishing the independence of British Southern Cameroon as against the unitary status of the state. For the fourth year, Bamenda has again recorded deserted streets on October 1. On the occasion of the International Day of Non-Violence, which is celebrated today, October 2, 2020, or annually, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Gutteres, has urged the world to be inspired by the spirit of Muhammad Gandhi and the enduring principles of the United Nations Charter, calling for a global ceasefire and focus on the COVID-19 pandemic. Eileen Sama reports.
The 2020 edition of the International Day of Non-Violence has as theme Shaping Peace Together, and is taking place at a time when countries of the world are tackling internal violence and a universal pandemic, the coronavirus. Addressing the international community as the UN marks Gandhi Jayanti Day, UN Secretary General Antonio Gutteres reiterated the call for a global ceasefire and focus on the world's common enemy, COVID-19, while calling on all to walk in the steps of Mahatma Gandhi, the father of India's liberation.
Marking the birthday of Mahatma Gandhi, this International Day highlights the remarkable power of non-violence and peaceful protest. It is also a timely reminder to strive to uphold values that Gandhi lived by: the promotion of dignity, equal protection for all, and communities living together in peace. On this year's observance, we have a special duty: stop the fighting to focus on our common enemy, COVID-19. There is only one winner of conflict during a pandemic, the virus itself. As the pandemic took hold, I called for a global ceasefire. Today we need a new push by the international community to make this a reality by the end of this year. Ceasefires would ease immense suffering, help to lower the risk of famine, and create space for negotiations towards peace. Deep mistrust stands in the way. Yet I see reasons for hope. In some places we see a standstill in the violence. A great many member states, religious leaders, civil society networks and others back my call. Now is the time to intensify our efforts. Let us be inspired by the spirit of Gandhi and the enduring principles of the UN Charter.
In Cameroon, acts of violence multiplied by the day, with the majority of victims being young girls and women, crowned by the turbulence in the two English regions, the northern regions and the east region. Acts of torture and killings are perpetrated by woman to woman, soldiers, separatist fighters, just to name but these. The principle of non-violence, also known as non-violent resistance, however, rejects the use of physical violence in order to achieve social or political change, often described as the politics of ordinary people. It should be noted here that this form of social struggle has been adopted by mass populations all over the world in campaigns for social justice.
The African Continental Free Trade Area is due to go operational come January 2021. These revelation and many more conclusions derived during the 11th session of the African Union Traders Ministers meeting via video conferencing. Dolly Gunday completes the story in the following report.
As many governments are easing up COVID-19 barrier measures, especially with the opening of their temporarily closed borders in favor of commercial deals, so too have African trade ministers begun brainstorming on ways to ensure the full operationalization of the African Continental Free Trade Area come January 20th, 2021. Going by video conferencing, the trade ministers reflected on how to impact the economies in prelude to the launch of the operationalization deal. Representing Cameroun at this 11th session was Cameroon's Minister of Commerce, Luc Magloire-Mbarga at Tangana.
To accelerate the notification of, our offer to access to the market. And on that issue, African Commission Union, until now, have received only 7 offers from 12 countries, among them the 6 countries from Samak.
In addition to the deliberations, rules of origin and products which make up the tariffs dismantling agreement issues were also noted at the hearings. In order to be able to effectively implement the deal, a consensus will be required from the states in order to meet up with the time frame. As the ministers also brace up with the upcoming appointment of the Director General of the World Trade Organization, the ministers gave their support to their Nigerian and Kenyan candidates.
Thanks, Dolly Gunday. Fon Quinta has updates from the African continent in the following report.
At least 3 people have died in detention centers housing thousands of Ethiopian migrants in Saudi Arabia. According to a report by Amnesty International, the migrants were facing unimaginable cruelty, including being chained together in pairs and using their cell floors as toilets. To this effect, Saudi Arabia authorities were urged to improve conditions of detention centers. A report published by the UN's International Organization for Migration revealed that some 2,000 Ethiopians remained stranded on the Yemen border without food or health care. Amnesty International further says there are about 16,000 migrants in Saudi Arabian detention centers earlier this year, thereby urging the Ethiopian government to urgently facilitate the voluntary repatriation of its nationals. From Saudi Arabia, let's visit Uganda, where Health Ministry has revised its protocol for discharging COVID-19 patients that are asymptomatic to leave hospital without a retest. Previously, patients could only be discharged after having 2 negative tests, which pushed most of them into complaining about the time spent waiting for confirmatory tests despite not showing symptoms. Uganda has to date confirmed 8,287 coronavirus cases, including 4,430 recoveries and 75 deaths. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, government has ordered reopening of all schools in the country come October 12, 2020. Education Minister spokesperson said bodies regulating the various tertiary institutions, including universities, colleges and polytechnics in the country, will come up with their own resumption schedules after putting in place structures for adherence to COVID-19 guidelines.
And like we mentioned in the beginning of the news, another episode has emerged in the ongoing FPF LFC saga, with Abdurrahman Hamadu Baba nominated as president of an ad hoc committee put in place to organize the 2020-2021 Elite 1 and 2 football championships. The president of the Etoile Filan football group of Garua was chosen during an emergency football meeting with the Administrative Council of Cameroun Professional League, which took place today, Friday. Abdurrahman Baba became prominent when he dragged the Cameroon football to the Court of Arbitration for Sports, which later suspended FPF and ousted then President Tambi Aroko Sidiki. FPF boss Seydou Mbombo Njoya, though a member of the Administrative Council of LFPC, did not show up. And in more sports news, the government of Cameroon has given the green light for the resumption of sporting activities in the country amidst COVID-19. This information is contained in a circular signed by Cameroon's Minister of Sports and Physical Education, Professor Narcisse Melekombi. Recently, the minister's circular states that athletes, officials, and spectators will not exceed 200. Sporting activities in the country had been suspended in March following the outbreak of coronavirus pandemic. And with that, we end today's edition of Prime News on My Major Prime. Thanks for being a part. Join us on Monday, God willing, at 6:30 Cameroon time for another edition of Prime News on My Major Prime. The news was produced by Ewane Eli Nolinga, coordinated by Faith Tata Berinyoy. My name is Genda Perjin Blanche King. Until we meet on Monday, stay tuned to My Major Prime at 7 p.m. Cameroon time. Kim Leonard will be here to talk about issues affecting you, I, Cameroon, Africa, and the world. Good night. Happy weekend.